Friday night, yeah. My daughters came into the room and I was watching my own video and laughing at the jokes. and they were really, really worried about that, and I really felt like Tony Hancock in the radio ham at that point, a very insular character. But I think the first thing to say is really, I'm really enjoying the campaign. And I think different people respond to pressure in different ways, don't they? They just do. And for me, it gives you a buzz. Because I think in the lead up to the general election, probably the quietest general election I've ever known. I've never seen as few leaflets, as few posters, as few aggravation. And yet, once the election were over, probably the most exciting political time the last fortnight has been for the last 5 or 6 years. Because you haven't really known what's going to go on. I think what I said were right. Not everything I say is right. But what I said were right before the election. Nobody wanted to win it. Absolutely nobody wanted to win it. And these are two examples I used in meetings. If Gordon Brown wanted to show some idea what the Tories were like, he'd have taken a photograph of a fox, hung it up and said, look, these lot want to bring this back, fox hunting. These are the barbaric toffs that's being represented by the other side. And if Cameron had wanted to win it, he'd have showed videos of Brown saying, I've got rid of boom and bust. As leader of the Labour Party, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, boom and bust is in history, we've got a special solution. But nobody wanted to win it. And we ended up in a situation where the working classes decided that they were going to vote Labour at the last minute. And they've ended up in a situation where Clegg's gone round embarrassing himself and the Liberal Party will split. There's no doubt that what he's done will have a really negative effect on the rank and file Liberal members. And the Billy Bragg option, which is, tactical voting, if Labour can't get in, vote Liberal because that'll keep the Tories out, it's got the Tories in. Tactical voting has got the Tories in this general election. I think if we run through the three parties, it's quite interesting really. You've got, I won't repeat everything I said on Thursday night because that'll bore even me. But you've got here a representative of the rich ruling class. Cameron, he's a toff. His wife's parents are the third biggest landowner in Scotland. He went to Eton. He's the 20th Prime Minister to have gone to Eton. I'm quite amused. I recommend people to read the Daily Telegraph, even though people don't. I recommend you to read a really interesting article today saying, look, when I started reading the article, it lost me really. But he said, look, and it's old Etonian's been elected Prime Minister. There's rioting in the streets, people occupy Parliament and the financial sector, and there's a general strike, and it looks like the government's going to fall. Well, what's this article about? And I didn't realise that the Prime Minister of Thailand was 2 years above Cameron. and you forget sometimes how they organise themselves. And when people laughed on Thursday night, I think it's really important to emphasise about public schools. I've had one or two people criticise me and say, look, I'm a socialist and I went to public school. And I said, well, that's your problem and that's your burden. Well, isn't it? I never defended Tony Benn's class background. That was his problem, wasn't it? If somebody says, if coal miner said to me, oh, Tony Benn comes from a millionaire back, well, he has to deal with that. That's not where I come from. He has to deal with that situation. And as I said on Thursday night, there was a picture in the Daily Telegraph last week of Cameron the day after the election, not the day before the election, in the school play at 9 years old at prep school. It stood on the same stage as Prince Edward, who was in the same play, and the Queen was in the audience watching it. Now that doesn't represent what he tried to project in the general election, does it? And the fact that on the cast list for the play, he was described as Cameron Minor, because that's how he described younger brothers apparently at a public school. So that's them. The Liberals, he went to a public school that was more expensive than Eden. He went to Westminster, which is more expensive. He's far more connected. His grandfather was the chair of the ABN Bank in the Netherlands, the biggest bank in the Netherlands. His father still is the chief executive of United Banks Trust. So both of them are criticising the banks, but it's not true. It's absolutely not true that they want to criticise the banks. And Brown is the friend of the banks. He's the one that wanted the light touch in the city. So all three of them are the banker's friend, and they've had to pretend to go into an election where they're saying they're criticising the banks, and it's an absolute lie, and people know it's a lie. As far as the Labour Party is concerned, it's interesting how people voted. Because I went to see my mother, who was 80 this year, on Friday, and I said to her, did you vote Labour? I didn't vote. I voted for somebody else. You didn't? I did. Who did you vote for? Well, I voted Labour, but I nearly didn't. So I said to her mother, and I'm asking you this in a personal capacity. You went and voted Labour, didn't you? Yes, you did. And the point, there's two interesting points. I've not got no illusions as to the people who stand for the Labour Party. None at all. But what's interesting is, 10,000 people joined the Labour Party in the 7 days after the general election. It represents something. That's a similar situation to what happened in 1979, isn't it? When people felt that they ought to go out and do something. I, like a lot of people, joined the Labour Party in 1979 as a result of Thatcher getting elected. That's what I did. And 10,000 people joined the Labour Party. And what this election's done, and you need to look underneath the surface, it's ruined the Blair project. The Blair project was disaffiliate the Labour Party from the trade unions and affiliate the Labour Party with the Liberal Party. And it stopped the Blair project, it stopped it in its tracks. Now, you might be depressed about the characters who's lining up to be the next leader, but the ruling class and the press always like to choose the leader of the Labour Party. They always like to do that. Blair came from nowhere when he was elected the leader of the Labour Party. The day Smith died, he wasn't in anybody's top 5 list. But they chose him, and it's like Noam Chomsky, the American, said, you know, we want to have a debate about A to Z, and the ruling class just want the debate about A to B. Is it going to be... In fact, which one of the two brothers is it going to be? Well, it should be about a brother, but it should be about a socialist brother or a socialist sister who discuss him as leader of the Labour Party. And the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter what they want to discuss. John McDonnell will be kept out of the press as a non-running candidate until he shows he can become a candidate, and he can only do that through the rank and file. But we're entering an economic situation now where it doesn't matter what you pretend to say and what fancy conversations you have. One person who's been conspicuous by his absence this election day is the guru of the Labour Party, Mandelson. I haven't heard anything about him since the day that the election result came in. And the key is going to be not who knows who and who's popular and who photographs the best. The key is going to be the economic crisis. Right? As I said on Thursday night, in the 80s, they dealt with their problems by privatisation. In the 90s, they dealt with their problem by deregulation. In 2000s, they dealt with it by PFI and lending people money who couldn't afford to repay it. And now they're going to deal with it by attacking what's left of the public sector, particularly in the education section. Massive landowner, massive building owner, and they'll front it by saying we're giving power to the parents. And the first school that they've come up with is Berkshire in Kirklees, where I'm the secretary of that branch. And Michael Gove says that's going to be the first community school. The parents are really keen on it, and they're being advised by Serco, who own Yaleswood Immigration Detention Centre, who own 3 state prisons, who own Aldermaston Nuclear Research Establishment, and they want 200 community schools in before the end of this year. And that's another transfer of public wealth into the private sector. And that's the world we'll be in now. Now the problem is, in the world we're in, our leadership has put their eggs in one basket, Labour winning the election. That's the only basket they put their eggs in. And if you really want to analyse our union and the leadership of our union, what they see is a alliance between the Citizens Advice Bureau and a charity. That's what they see the union as. And that's going to get us absolutely nowhere. And that's why I've tried to make it a theme of my campaign that it's about organisation. It's about organising out. There's nothing new going to have to be done in the next 12-month period that our forefathers and foremothers didn't do before the Second World War. These people, like the Miliband brothers, these people, like Mandelson, they didn't stand on street corners and raise money for the Labour Party. They didn't cycle around collecting union subscriptions. Their forefathers and foremothers didn't do them things, but ours did. And what have we got in the union? A bureaucracy that doesn't know how to organise. They can't front the members. They can't go and see them. If Gordon Brown can't talk to one 66-year-old woman in Rochdale, how are they going to address millions of working class people in this country? Now, I went every Thursday to the bin strike in Leeds, a strike where national officials refused to turn up, where no publicity went out. And as I said on Thursday, the chairman of the Leeds branch is from Cornwall, and he speaks with a profound Cornish accent, and he could never speak at these meetings because they just chanted at him all the time, Green Army, Green Army, Green Army. Because they think Plymouth's in Cornwall. They have no idea. And to give him his due, at least he can talk to working people. And one thing that strike did, it united a branch that had been torn apart for years, because the branch could concentrate on the employer then. Well, let's not forget, it wasn't a Labour employer, it was a Liberal Tory employer. But we went to one of these meetings where the members saw the end of the dispute was a victory, and the chair of the branch, who's from Cornwall, says that every week they played a record at the meeting. These are the craziest meetings you've ever seen. They were in a comedy club, a disco comedy club in Leeds. There were 400 or 500 there, and they were really they weren't interested in standing orders and the right to reply. Does that make sense? And then so they played this, and this lad says to